Okay, members, you settle down, please. Good evening and welcome to Ramsgate Town Council's full council this evening. And first of all, can I just ask you all to ensure that your mobile phones are turned off or turned to silent? If you need to, yes, by all means. By all means, Councillor Young, by all means.
I can't read them.
Okay, like that. Okay, so let's move on because we've got a large agenda this evening. Controversial one, maybe, shall we say? But anyway, so item 1, apologies. So do we have any apologies, Town Clerk?
We have no apologies, but we do have one vacant seat at the moment.
Right, yes, thank you. Item 2, any declarations of interest on the items on the agenda this evening? No, I take that as a no. Right, item 3, public participation. Are there any public requests to speak?
No requests.
No
Chair.
requests, okay, thank you. Part 2 of item 3, report from district councillors on matters directly related to Ramsgate. Is there any councillor that wishes to state anything at all? No, thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, Councillor Piper.
Sorry, I thought Councillor Austin might be about to speak. Councillor Austin mentioned at our meeting at TDC last night an appreciation for the invitation to Ramsgate Town Councillors to go to Thanet District Council to hear a presentation about the levelling up monies and so on. And Councillor Austin commented that it was a welcome invitation, and
I referred to the fact that we have a working group to review scrutiny chaired by Councillor Curry, looking at better and more effective work with town and parish councils, and it felt to me like a positive move, because it worried me a little that certain members at TDC seem to think that effective work with town and parish councils involved delegating a lot of stuff to town and parish councils without giving them any money, and I thought there were many other more constructive ways we could interact.
I have to say, thank you for that, Councillor Austin. I have to say that I had to ask that the Ramsgate Town Councillors who are not part of TDC as well, for them to be able to attend that.
And the town
public
attended as well. That was really
and that was great. Yeah, thank you ever so much for that. Item 3. Thank you, Councillor Piper, for raising that. Part 3. Report from county councillors on matters directly related, and I'm pleased to see we have both of our county councillors here this evening. And ladies first.
No, because I went first last time.
Oh, right, in that case, Joe, please, anything that you want to say.
I do on the streets, I see what lights are not working, zebra crossings that need to be painted, lots of issues. I'm going to have a meeting with Paul Ballard right around some of the areas. It's a very grey area to all the roads from Warnock filling station into Ramsgate, all the islands need cleaning up, tidying up. When I say KCC, they say TDC. When I say TDC, they say KCC. So we have to look at this awful islands that are in the middle of the road, which I thought were highways. They're not by doing themselves. So, anyway, August is August for KCC, but I'm on the case. In a nice.
Thank you. Is that it? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Constantine.
All right, just a few things. Thank you very much for the invitation tonight. So, they're just on the yellow lines issues. I've got a few of them, and they're always coming in, those queries and concerns. But someone Dumpton Gap Road,
Dumpton Park Drive.
Dumpton Park Drive. Thank you. Yeah, my stuff is not that good.
You want him to go to the wrong road.
But to be called, well, no, he's got the exact location. Paul Malik. The other thing on the matter of traffic, I mean, I'm sure Trevor has the same issues as I have. I'm sure you all experience it as well. Constant, set of queries and complaints. So, on the basis of that, because this has been bubbling along for a few years now, I've set up a public meeting on the 9th, Friday the 9th of September, and can put in between 7 o'clock and 9 o'clock. I'd be very grateful if people would spread the word and also, you know, consider attending to see what we can do, because I think we need a 20 is plenty plan for Thanet. I think that would probably be cheaper to implement than trying to do piecemeal zones, etc. I've invited the local MP, I've invited Craig McKinley, but he's declined to attend, which I think is a great shame, actually. The other issue I just wanted to touch on is I've set aside the members' grant that I received for a Moby mount for increased mobility down on the beach. That hasn't happened. So actually what I'm thinking of doing is rolling that over for next year, and maybe, because we did make some progress thanks to Steve and thanks to Anne-Marie, maybe we could look at doing that early in the new year, starting to look at where we could find a location for February as well. Just to update on the situation with the travellers, the judicial review that we took failed, but there is an appeal in, so we're waiting the outcome of the appeal. We do have a list of 43 people from the site that we've put into Thanet District Council as homeless. I'm currently having a row with Thanet District Council about that, you won't be surprised. And then the only other thing is, it comes up later on the agenda, but I have arranged a meeting with Tony Boydman to answer a set of questions that I think you all saw on Facebook. I've circulated it quite widely. Other than that, bus cuts, health costs, etc.
Any update on bus cuts?
Well, the Kent County Council, there was it was called in, and they are waiting, the officer is waiting for central government to decide whether or not Kent County Council is pretty enough in the beauty parade that is now funding for public services. They are waiting for that. I also just forgot to tell you this, I also wrote to Roger Goff to ask him early on, what are we going to be doing during the winter to keep people warm?
Yes.
How are we going to be looking after our elder and more vulnerable residents? Heck, because we've only got 2 wardens in the area. And also, could we make an intervention possibly for hard-pressed parents of children with, you know, school-aged children, so perhaps they could buy supermarket uniforms rather than having to buy the very expensive uniforms.
Indeed.
He came back and said we'd discuss it on the 15th at full council. I wrote again a few days ago to say I notice, and I sent him the report, that many other councils now are quick off the mark on this. They're making provision, certainly starting to think about it in line with their district and town councils. And he's come back to tell me I have to wait until the 15th. So I will have to wait till the 15th.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Austin and then...
I just wanted to ask about bus cuts.
Oh, okay. Councillor Nixie?
2 things, if I may. First of all, am I right in thinking there's a TDC meeting on the 9th of September?
No, it's the day.
It's the day before, right, that's good. That's what I thought, but I couldn't remember. Yeah. That's brilliant. And secondly, again, am I right, somebody in the room will probably know this, Margate's getting a 20-mile-an-hour zone across the board generally, aren't they?
Yes, that's going to the Joint Transport Board on the evening of the 15th of September. And I'll be going along to support that, but I'm hoping we can repeat the process for Ramsgate.
We've got an item on this later, can we?
Yes, no, but it was to do with Kent County
Yeah.
Council funding, and I just wondered if the councillors would possibly say, because I believe it was, wasn't it, the Kent County Councillors for Margate that were helping fund it? I don't know if that's true or not. I wondered if we...
Don't know, I don't know.
But okay, cheers.
Okay, thank you.
Steve?
Oh, sorry, Barbara.
And Barbara. Just
Throw something at me, Barbara.
Just
See you.
update, Karen, the KCC Ukrainian link people arrived at our meeting today. We're not providing any service, we're sort of being facilitators. One of the key issues she said is a real issue, surprise, surprise, is that the government is not responding fast enough. What's really worrying is Kent has the largest number of Ukrainians of any of the areas in the UK, but KCC is not necessarily getting the funding as quickly as it needs it. So we agreed that as ward councillors we would try and write to the MP to stress that he needs to sort that out as soon as possible.
Okay.
But the meetings have been really successful, actually.
Good.
So.
But I haven't been invited to any, so I don't know anything about them. So.
Well, they're just every 2 weeks. They're just for refugees and sponsors and other interested service providers. So are there on a Wednesday, 10 till 11. So there was one today and there'll be one in a fortnight and thereafter right through to Christmas.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Constantine. Oh, sorry, Barbara, I beg your pardon. Beg your pardon. Your pardons, I am begging.
I don't know if, are you aware of Courtstairs Park? At the far end of the Esplanade?
Yes.
Right, well, we've got 4 bollards there now, I've got them put in. So that when people come out of the park, they're not going to get hit
Yes.
by the cyclists. My son travels on his bike in Hackney. Now, they have signs up there. One's a smile when you're going nice and slow, and the other one's a fierce face if you're going too fast. Because people come down this stretch, and even with the bollards, I'm afraid a child is going to get hurt. And we need something. The other thing my son said they have up there is like a small ridge every now and then in the cycle path, and that makes them slow down.
Yes, I hate that.
I'll have a look and
If you would
I'll
be
write
so
to them.
kind. We had a lady, she had cost us £600 for a dog.
Yeah.
So there's been quite a few incidents there.
Right, okay, I'll have a look.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay, is there anybody else who I've missed? No? Okay, thank you. Move on to item 4, minutes of the council. And this is to approve the minutes of the ordinary meeting of the council held on the 27th of July as a true record. So do I have a proposer, please? Councillor Zecchi, a seconder. Councillor Hetherington. All in favour, those minutes approved? Thank you, that's carried. Right, item 5 is finances, including grants, and this is to receive a report of payments. The council is asked to note the payments authorised by the town clerk and the RFO and approve the payments above the threshold delegated to the town clerk and the RFO. Over to the town clerk, thank you.
So the first sheet is payments under £1,000, which have been made over the last month, authorised by myself. And the second sheet, which is the third page, is payments over £1,000 to be authorised by yourselves.
Okay. Any comments by any members at all? Councillor Piper?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering at this stage now, where we all know each other rather better than we did at the beginning. Clearly the £1,000 limit was set for a reason. I'm just wondering if I could ask through the chair, the town clerk, is that a legal reason it's set at £1,000, or is there any reason why we can't raise that to say 1,500 to save, if not least, the sheets of paper? It doesn't mean we don't care how you spend the money. It just means that there may well be occasions, particularly with expenses towards Radford House and all sorts of other things, where you may need to authorise more than that, and to wait for authorisation from full council does seem to me to be a little bit churlish for £1,000. I'm just wondering if there's any way we could raise that figure.
It could be reconsidered at the Finance and General Purposes Committee that's coming up in mid-September. I think when I redrafted the financial regulations, I tried to suggest quite a conservative amount because it was quite new in my starting, but possibly a bit higher, or having, at the moment, my powers of expenditure and my emergency powers are both set at £1,000, having kind of maybe the emergency amount that bit higher would be helpful.
Makes sense.
So can I just then clarify, are you going to bring a report to F&GP?
Yeah.
Okay, you satisfied with that, Councillor Piper?
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, okay. Okay, members, you've been asked to receive the report and note it, so all in favour of noting the report, please show. Thank you. Right, item 6, Radford House Development Project. To receive and note the following updates from Radford House project managers, which is Radford House, the programme, meanwhile use up until the 12th of August 22. 2, project managers update to 31st of August 2022. And 3, meanwhile use compliance compliance requirements. I will ask Councillor Nixie, do you have anything to say on this as the chair of Radford House?
I probably will, but I'd let the town clerk probably give the nuts and bolts first, and I can fill in if that's all right.
Yeah, of course. Happy to.
So hopefully that which is in the report is quite straightforward. I think the really interesting work is going to be coming at the next council meeting, I think there could be merit in having an extraordinary meeting, which is where you're going to be receiving quotes from various professionals, which is really, that start shaping what the overall cost is going to be. We're tendering for a variety of appointments at the moment, and it's at the next meeting you're going to be getting all those tenders. The project managers will be attending to explain the ins and outs of what everyone's going to be doing and why they're needed, and you'll start to get some true costs.
Sorry, go on.
Sorry.
Questions to that first, yeah.
Councillor Green? Councillor Nixie then?
Well, and just on from that, I mean, it's very exciting. First thing is the guys that we've employed are excellent. They're very thorough. They're very good at explaining everything. They are happy to explain anything to us at any point we'd like. So they're at pains to make sure that everybody understands the process and what's going on. And they've broken it down, like the town clerk has just said, that we're tendering for different parts of the role and so on and so forth. So they've broken it down so that you can see exactly who's doing what, and again, when they come in, they'll explain those roles. So it's very clear to us what's going on, who's doing what, how much it's going to cost us, and so on and so forth. So it's very helpful on our side. We're getting all the information that we
Very positive.
Very positive.
Councillor Green?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's true to say that your representatives on the steering group are concerned about how long this process has taken to date. And with that in mind, we were very keen to press the possibility of what's called meanwhile uses. And by that we mean, rather than wait until all the T's are crossed and the building can open completely to the public, we're keen to be able to make use of it in the meanwhile. And we've asked the professionals to let us know just what would need to be done to allow that to happen, health and safety wise, etc. And so long as that doesn't add awfully to the costs, we're pressing them to do that, hopefully to have some sort of meanwhile use by November of this year.
Just to clarify that, the meanwhile use is very useful in a couple of things. One of the requirements we have for the architectural heritage funding is consultation, but not consultation as in sort of like, what do you want the building to be? A lot of it's sort of like information. And so that meanwhile use that we need to be doing to tick that box too, as well as the consultation, can work hand in hand. So it's not necessarily just a case of like we're going to be opening up a boot fair or something like that. It can be strategic things that will gain information for evaluations and so on and so forth to tick the boxes we need for the Architectural Heritage Fund. So luckily they work sort of like in unison with each other. And again, we can feed back more onto the council about that and what's going to be happening at another point.
I think it's important that our residents understand that obviously the processes to get the thing, start getting it off the ground, have taken some while, not down to the offices of Ramsgate Town Council, but through the offices of Thanet District Council, and also getting the right application in and everything dealt with, etc., etc. And don't forget, obviously, during the pandemic, it was used constantly. Food banks, of which I know Councillor Wynne was fully engaged in there, and plus other things that we've had there. We have had markets there. We have had that. So I think that's I think we need to put a little bit of positive in that. But I do honestly take what you say as the way forward. Yeah. Okay. Members, any further questions at all on this? No? So members, this is for you to note. Can I just get a show of hands so that you're happy to note this report, please? Thank you. Item 7, town improvement and beautification. Well, I think I'm the one who needs the beautification. But certainly, item 1 of that, of item 7, one of item 7 is to consider a motion from Councillor Crittenden to develop an action and strategy to improve the local public spaces. And point 2 of 7, to receive a report regarding the Eastcliff Bandstand and consider the exploratory work proposed therein relating to the decorative lights. Do you want to come in with this, or I think that's what I was going to say. Yeah, I didn't know if you wanted to speak, but Councillor Crittenden, just deal with you first.
Yes, although this has got my name on it, this really is something that is joint between myself and Councillor Huxley. Just to start it off, I'll read what's written here is Ramsgate Town Council notes that many of our public spaces, particularly the gardens along the upper and lower promenades of the east and west cliffs, do not receive sufficient levels of garden maintenance, leaving those areas looking and feeling neglected. Whilst much of this space is the responsibility of Thanet District Council, we have been advised that TDC does not have the resources to look after these assets in a way local residents would wish. It is therefore proposed that Ramsgate Town Council develops an action and strategy to coordinate and support existing volunteer gardening groups and undertake public spaces gardening work throughout Ramsgate, not only of the east and west cliff promenades, but also the town centre flower beds and through the creation of pocket parks elsewhere in Ramsgate. It is proposed that development of such a strategy would be undertaken through the Town Promotion Committee and take into consideration the neighbourhood plan and town regeneration plans, recognising the role of TDC as primary stakeholder and landowner. So some of these things that are in here have already been discussed in various forums, and that is the idea of expanding the works that our technicians do in the form of the pocket parks around into other wards. That's come up before, and I know that maybe the town clerk might be able to add more to what's happened on that since it was raised. We also have some other things that have been happening of late that have moved on that we felt would begin to make this something that we might be able to do. This is very much something that is open for discussion because I feel to some extent that this is actually moving the council into maybe a new or slightly different way of what we've done before by actually bringing a focus in. Certainly our cliff tops and certainly Eastcliff is in an appalling state of disrepair. Not just the buildings, which is the bandstand we're going to look at in a minute, but Albion Gardens only looks as good as it does because of the volunteer groups. And we have talked about whether or not as RTC we can have that combination of the groups. What this would then do is hopefully give us the opportunity to encourage and help expand on those volunteer groups, and then we fill in the gaps in the middle where the volunteer groups are not doing it. So we've got the group in the Western Undercliff, we've got Albion Gardens, there's the Winterstoke Gardens, there's various we've got new groups that are taking over and dealing with the bandstand. They've just cleared the weeds and things like that. So that's where the idea and the concept is coming from. I don't know if Corinna, if you want to add anything.
So it's the east and west cliff. So we've talked to Central Harbour Councillors and us. So it's not just the seafront, which is the criticism. It's always just the seafront that gets all the resources. So if you could have a combination of the east and west cliff as one thing, and we talked about that, didn't we? So, and also other places in Ramsgate.
Elsewhere in Ramsgate.
Can we just at one?
This is important because is this too much to take on, Chair? This is what Councillor Crittenden and I are worried about. You know, are we taking on too much? Can the technicians cope? Do we need more money resources to put into this? I mean, this is work that TDC should be doing, but they're not. We've asked them directly lots of times, you know, we want this and this done, and nothing's happened. They've come back to us and say, we have not got the resources, full stop. So you know, it needs, and the residents have come back to us and said, this isn't good enough. It's a mess, so.
Can I just intercede there and just to say that I did write as requested by council to TDC, wrote to Louise Askew, gave her some leeway because she was getting married and was away for 3 weeks. However, I know that she's very, very busy with the levelling up funds, etc. But I've had no response, not even an acknowledgement. So I will be going back to her because that is what we were going to do. We asked for was for TDC's help to get the volunteers on both Eastcliff and Central Harbour Ward together. Bear with me a second, Will.
Okay.
Anything you want to say?
No,
You're okay with that?
I was going to mention about, I think there's a role here for the F&GP chair
Right.
and myself regarding existing staffing capacity,
Yeah.
but Councillor Green had his hand up.
Yeah,
so
we'll get round to him. Okay, then I'll just go round. Barbara?
I remember we were talking about things that we wanted to do, and we were looking at a community payback group. Did anything come of that? Because they were looking for work to do, and we've got loads of work, haven't we?
That we have. That we have.
What's happened in that area?
So Maxine has been in contact with the local community payback organiser with the intention of a first project being painting of the rainbow steps. To give her an example of, to get something that volunteers can be proud of and give Maxine an experience of how the process works with an intention that she'll keep going.
Yeah.
And then hopefully, then we'll be able to expand on what they're doing or what we want them to actually do and do in the places that are the worst places that we've got in Ramsgate to get them sorted out. So
I mean, I would be willing, out of my kitty, to buy a bag of
sweet
seed, a meadow seed to plant along those banks, because it would look so much better than it does.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nixie, I have first.
Thank you. I just want to know what coordination of volunteer groups looks like, because I'm conscious of, we talked about this before, didn't we, saying that, you almost don't want to oversee things because then you're the boss and they're doing things very well alone, but we also, looked at time constraints and all sorts of things, and I can see pluses and minuses for it, so I wondered what, in reality, that looked like.
Well, Westcliff volunteer group, they are out every day clearing.
Yeah, I think they all are, Barbara. So my question is to Councillor Crittenden and Councillor Huxley, just give me a brief outline of what coordinating volunteer groups in reality is.
I think in fairness, that's a part of what this debate is about. I'm not going to try and tell.
Yeah, no.
I think that is, I would see it as us knowing who's doing what where and being available to offer support and advice on things like drought-resistant plants, for example, where in Albion Gardens we've had to do extra watering over the summer, whereas if we have more drought-resistant plants, then that might have been an easier thing to do. So it's not about telling them what to do, but it's about being supportive and knowing who's where so that we can fill in the gaps more than anything. Now that's how I would see it, but that's open to much more discussion, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Green.
I have spoken to staff about this, and in general, they would welcome a much more structured approach to how their time is used. It is important, I think, that residents in all wards feel that Ramsgate Town Council is looking after their environment. Although it's inevitable, I think, that the seafront wards, because they've got more open spaces, would get a larger share of the work. In terms of coordination of resident groups, of course, the big issue would determine of how involved we are the health and safety issues. I don't think this council could take on being responsible for health and safety issues for community groups. So that would need to be carefully arranged. We'd need to do it with a very light touch, I think.
That's
Sorry,
how I see it.
sorry, I think this is a bigger issue than
But
deal with it here. I think
I'd
we,
like to say, I mean, we've only got 5 or 6 staff available. So taking on areas from TDC formally would be a very different matter to helping out where we can. I'm not sure we've got the resource to take things on formally. Because if we have a couple of staff off, we're then very thin on the ground if we've got real heavy commitments. So it needs careful handling, but I think we should certainly try.
no, not yet. Councillor,
I clearly fully support this, and I am fully involved in sorting out, in volunteering on my own cliff and sometimes on this cliff when there are bigger things to be done, because the groups do actually talk to each other informally. I think one of the first things we need to do is each of the ward councillors, we actually need to and it would be it's clearly part of the motion that's been put here, is to audit what we have and what we'd like to add. And until that audit's done, we don't really know exactly where the gaps are and what the community groups actually need. I know from my experience of helping on Spencer Square and at the toilets and at the lavender bed by Queen's House, is sometimes it's as simple as, can you come and collect our rubbish or our green waste? Other times it's, can we access some topping for either soil. We need somebody to go and collect soil, although I have to say the nursery is brilliant at that. But I think this is, and the group I worked under is obviously Addington Street Community Group, and we've got public liability insurance. But I think in the audit we've got a chance to maybe have an overriding group where there could be public liability insurance, community group public liability insurance that all the gardens sit under. Presently, Addington Street pays £774 a year for our public liability insurance. We have means to do that at the moment, but I know there are community groups that don't have that means. So it could be beneficial in that audit if we're also looking at that type of stuff, because it could be that then there is an overriding organisation with public liability that everybody works under. So I think this is a positive move. I'm going to fully support it, and we need to take some responsibility for our beds.
thank you, Councillor Lynch. Councillor Green.
I just wanted to come very briefly back on Councillor Green's point, is that one of the things that's perhaps not clear in here is that we would see this as a staged approach, so we wouldn't just suddenly do the whole lot at once, but that it would have to be at a level and speed at which our technicians could cope with. And that's very much part of the thing. So I just wanted to hopefully reassure that.
Thank you, Councillor Piper.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think there is a golden opportunity here. I think it links in partially to what Councillor Wing was talking about in terms of auditing what we've got. I think we've got a golden opportunity here to let the people of Ramsgate know exactly what is being proposed here. I think the onus would be then on the volunteer groups to make themselves more formally known to the council, where they work, what it is they do. And it occurs to me that two things. First of all, this council shows the volunteers that we care about what they're doing and we fully appreciate what they're doing. That's just at a very basic level. We actually care and we're grateful for what you're doing. But we have a magazine coming out very shortly. It strikes me that an article, if the two councillors wouldn't mind, if you put an article in there inviting volunteer groups to make contact with the council, and then we can go from there and find out just who would be interested in this kind of project of working together and coordinating as you describe it. So I think it's a great idea. We just need to get everybody, we need to get them in here first so we find out what they're doing, how they're doing it, what help they might need, and so on. And that gives us some kind of audit and structure as to what they're up to. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, councillor Piper. Councillor Austin?
I was just going to say, it strikes me that we have the potential to create a sort of parallel thing to what we have with event organisers, for example, where people are in touch with each other and have the potential maybe to share resources or to collaborate in obtaining appropriate insurance or that kind of thing. That could be something that we're working towards, and seeing as we go along how our technicians are able and contribute, and how the skills that they have, you know, Gary Miles's knowledge of grasses and lawns and that sort of thing could actually help and advise those groups as well as supplement what the BBC isn't doing.
Thank you. Councillor Huxley? No, Councillor Huxley.
So, lots of ideas we threw around, things like one of the technicians to be a trainee gardener, apprentice gardener, you know, if they wanted to be, so they could sort of give advice to the volunteer groups and the other way round, so there's a sort of symbiotic relationship. This has to go through the town promotion committee as a sort of structure. I mean, Maxine Morgan, as far as I can see, has done quite a lot of work with the volunteer groups anyway. So we had Councillor Mackinson did an article in one of the couple. Was it last time at Community Ad magazine or the one before?
Yeah.
And we got one volunteer. She asked for volunteer gardeners, and we got one volunteer gardener that's working.
Well, that
now.
was for the flower beds.
Yes,
to adopt a
in
flower
the
bed.
East and Westcliff,
Yeah.
and to adopt a flower bed. So she's going to work at the Bandstand. So she's done quite a lot of work there already. And I think Maxine's got liability insurance for her through the
West
London. Yes. So
We've done a lot through the town team in the past.
So there's those connections there already, Chair, so.
Lovely, thank you.
like that.
Okay, are there any more speakers? No, so it's proposed that the development of such a strategy would be undertaken through the Town Promotion Committee and take into consideration the neighbourhood plan and town regeneration plans, recognising the role of TDC as primary stakeholder and landowner. So that is a proposal, and that's from Councillor Crittenden.
May I note that in relation to that proposal, members need to be aware that the F&GP committee has a remit in relation to staffing and budget, so that it would be led by town promotion, but possibly the F&GP would also have a role.
So are you happy with that amendment from the town clerk? It's an amendment from me, if you like, from the town clerk into your proposal.
Through Town Promotion Committee in conjunction with F&GP.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a seconder, please? Councillor Wing. And all in favour, please show. That's carried. Thank you. Goody good. Right. Next item, which is item 2 of 7, to receive a report regarding the Eastcliff Bandstand. Consider the exploratory work proposed therein relating to the decorative lights. Councillor Huxley.
Oh.
Town clerk.
Town clerk. Oh, I know, but it just said Councillor Huxley, so.
Is it?
Yeah, I thought.
It's through the town promoter, I think, Chair.
Okay, I thought it was you. I blame her.
So actually there's various inquiries and conversations going on regarding the Eastcliff Bandstand, which the ward councillors will be more aware of than myself, and then also the proposal here, Councillor Green, as a former ward councillor, will know all the ins and outs of, but there's a tremendous amount of equipment that's going unused at the Eastcliff Bandstand, lighting and sound equipment in the tens of thousands of pounds, and the light and sound engineer who originally installed it and the electrician at the time are available at the moment and would be keen to explore actually what condition everything's in, what state the equipment is in at the moment. There would be a fee, and possibly looking between £800 and £1,000, and this would ascertain how much of the system they can get up and running, obtain the equipment relating to this project that is currently being stored at Radford House. They'd need to access the loft hatch, and then forcibly access the loft hatch and then repair it.
I'm sure it is broken, Chair. But
If possible, try and set up a demo, but the intention would be to report back to RTC and the community on the current situation and a better understanding of what would be needed to spend to reinstate what was originally put in place in 2010.
Yeah.
okay, councillor Green.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that, I'm sure most people would agree that Eastcliff Bandstand is a hugely under-resourced,
Yeah.
underused resource.
Yep.
There is about £12,000 worth of equipment at prices 10 years ago that was installed there, as the town clerk said, sound equipment and lighting equipment that could be brought back into use, and it could make the bandstand an attractive place to use, like happens in other towns like Broadstairs and Margate. Of course, that would depend on permission from TDC, who own it, and also consultation with these residents groups that are now taking an interest in the area. But I think for a small amount of money, relatively small amount of money, it could be a really exciting project.
Agree. Anybody else? So,
No, Helen was supposed to.
I'm just quickly rereading this. I can't see it in here, but we do actually have, the Ramsgate Society has put in an application for an asset community value.
Yeah.
Is it in there?
No,
I didn't, because I wasn't sure whether that was
Oh, right.
knowledge to be.
So they've put
public.
an application for an ACV. We won't know what the outcome of that is until about October. But just to add that onto this, we are just setting up a meeting date with them and the group interested in the bandstand. And someone has been along and a couple have completely redid the dance floor. So it is looking infinitely better than it was. So there is things moving. But this also fits in very much with the proposal that we've just had. So they do tie in very much together, so.
councillor Piper.
Thank you, Chair. If we get the bandstand with the sound equipment up and running and lights and so on, it could be advertised in local schools and local dance schools that this is available for concerts, and mums and dads, nanas and granddads would flock to see their children performing. And just a sort of slight side issue, we don't have our Granville and the Winter Gardens, so this would be an opportunity for young talent to perform, but obviously it needs to be advertised that it's available if this project comes up.
Brilliant.
Good thoughts.
Good idea.
It could be used.
Yeah, in a second.
It could be used as part of our Christmas celebrations,
Indeed.
November, Easter time. It could really take on, which would be a good thing. Would be a good thing.
Thank you, councillor Piper. Councillor Huxley.
Following from Councillor Linda Piper, same thing. It's an underused resource. It's been covered in graffiti, weeds, buddleias growing out at the top of it. It's a listed building. It needs to be used. Weddings, bands, you name it. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Wing.
Again, fully support. Only my proviso would be, can we write to TDC and ask them to hand it to us? Because I firmly believe we need to take most of our assets back. I would also like us to explore the idea of not only looking at that equipment. The problem with the bandstand the problem with any event on our cliff is the wind. So can we explore, there are modern pop-up screens that could be moved around so that we could run events in the summer. I believe in the good old days there would have been deck chairs all around and people would have been performing. So my aspiration would be, we're aiming for next summer to make sure that that bandstand is fully operational as Broadstairs is, and we should be. That's our aspiration. So again, fully support.
Thank you.
Just in relation to the weather, the town promoters identified that there is gullies or runners where it looks like there's been for screens to go in.
There must be a modern version.
Yeah.
That will let some degree of wind through, because when that northeasterlies come, nothing will stay on the ground. But these are all things that are achievable and we should be looking at. And it is a shocking shame that that's been left bare and unused, along with a lot of our assets.
Indeed.
You know, the Tom Thumb Theatre was famous for being the smallest theatre in Thanet. It's now the largest.
Well, maybe we can have the smallest one with it. Thanks, Dan. Councillor Austin?
I was just going to point out about the screens. I believe Laura Probert from the Eastcliff group has photographic evidence of how the screens once were. So it might be of interest to have a look at what may happen with that. But certainly we've tried in the past, when I was part of the Eastcliff group, to do stuff at Christmas and ended up having to be effectively evacuated into the Ramsgate tunnels, who kindly hosted us because the weather was so terrible.
That's right, I remember that, yeah.
And luckily the tunnels stepped forward, bless them.
Councillor Constantine?
Just to reiterate what other people have said, but we do have an enormous amount of bands and musical talents and performers that would love a venue, and that would be ideal. I mean, a lot of the time we don't have an issue with the weather, not always, but it could be a great location, great venue. Cheap, free.
Cheap, Councillor TDC, see it's up and running.
Councillor Green?
Charges.
The original screens were crystal glass
screens.
Which we wouldn't do now.
No.
And they only protected the performers, not the
audience.
Not the audience. but
bring a Mac.
They were tougher then. But surely, you know, modern technology, we could do something.
I've written stock, I think.
So we could.
The original restoration 10 years ago failed to tackle the dance floor, which is in an awful cracked and uneven state. But if we could show that we are making use of it, the area and the bandstand itself, then we could start to consider whether a bid.
Something could be put over the existing flooring, you know, to use it until such time as it is repaired.
It's a beautiful floor.
Specialised concrete that can be polished, that's the point about it. And I think there's only 2 in the country, and the other one is in Northern Ireland.
Right, I've got Councillor Piper, Councillor Crittenden and Councillor Nixon, and I'm going to move on from that. Sorry, Councillor Morlin, all right, I'll leave you come in. Okay, so Councillor Piper.
Thank you very much, Chair. I fully support the idea of getting this up and running. We are desperately short of venues now, but I hope Council will forgive me for a little bit of promotion here. The stage in St Mark's Church Hall is the same size as the stage in the Winter Gardens, and the hall seats safely, with all fire regulations met, 200 people. St Mark's Church some time ago decided to make that building a building for community use and for dance schools, entertainment schools, and so on, to be able to use it. This is in no way in competition to the bandstand, but just to let members be aware that recently, the 3 of us here, we gave a substantial grant to the church to pay for the stage lighting and the sound equipment, and we're attending a meeting with the diocese next week to discuss how long it's going to take, how they're going to do it. It's come from our, what is now ward grant, that previously was our council allowance that we were using as a ward grant. It's come from there, and they hope to have it up and running very soon. So that would be a kind of just an update on what's going on right in the centre of Ramsgate, if you like. There will be this venue which all sorts of groups will be welcome to use.
That's good to hear. That's
shameless promotion of their
No. Is that with Andrew, your meeting?
same size as Winter Gardens, big stage.
Okay.
I'm sure that's in the magazine.
Yes, I've had a word with the project lead, Mr. Kevin Spain at the church. We're going to put together an article for the magazine.
Thank you. Thank you. Members, can we just concentrate, please? Councillor Crittenden?
I wanted to pick up on Councillor Wing's comment about writing to TDC. However, I think I'm inclined to wait until we know the outcome of the ACV application. But the other thing is with that is, as a council, we will need to make a decision as to the level of involvement that we want to have in taking over the bandstand. Do we want to take over the bandstand? Do we want to take it off TDC's hands and it become ours? Do we want to release it from the TDC and we take responsibility for it? Do we want to go in as part of a partnership or consortium? Because Ramsgate Society are willing to go into a consortium, but they don't want to, although they've applied for the ACV, they do not want to take over the bandstand in their own name, but they are willing to be part of a consortium. And we also have the Facebook group, and I am aware of another group, but I don't know how public that is, so I'm not going to name it, but there are potentially 4 of us, including RTC, that could become a part of the consortium. So as a council, looking maybe not for this meeting, but looking ahead once the ACV is done, that's a decision that I think that we will need to discuss.
And then we know we've got people like the festival that can run events.
Sorry, Councillor Wing, sorry, there are other speakers to come in. Councillor Nixie?
I was just going to say, therefore we after a proposal to be able to release monies towards that.
So yes, so at the moment the proposed expenditure is within my powers of expenditure, but I haven't authorised it because it's actually not a project or a budget that the council has set. So if the council is interested, I would suggest that the miscellaneous budget could be used fired for this purpose.
Good. I second that, Chair.
Yeah.
Is that a proposal and a seconder? Councillor Moore?
Thank you. Going back to what we could do with the bandstand, one thought crossed my mind. Have we ever thought of brass bands on it?
Yeah,
And another thing is, I came to live here in 1881. Top
18.
You're looking good.
Yeah. Well, in 1981, on the top floor in Wellington Crescent, overlooking the bandstand, and there was the band twirlers then, used to come from all over Kent to have competitions on there, and you see everybody hanging out of the windows watching. You know, we could perhaps do something like that, but I know things disappear. But
I think we need to get the basics done first, and then we can talk about the 1881 brass band.
do you remember the coloured lights?
Right, thank you, members. Let's calm down. We have a proposal and we have a seconder. Can I ask all those in favour of the proposal? Thank you, that is carried. Thank you very much. Let us move on. Thank you. Interesting. Okay, item 8. Highways 20 mile an hour, part 1 of 8, to receive and consider a motion from the Central Harbour Ward Councillors in support of a 20 mile an hour speed limit. And I thought I might tie this in as well, the second part of 8, to consider a response to KCC's consultation on a proposal to reduce the speed limit on 10 roads across the town centre from 30 to 20 miles an hour. So I will pass this over to our Central Harbour Councillors. Councillor Austin.
Thank you. Obviously, you've read the proposal. This obviously follows the tragic accident that happened in Leopold Street, and we're not suggesting that in any way reducing speed limits would stop a drunk or drugged driver from mowing down pedestrians. But on the other hand, Leopold Street is one of those streets where people come round the corner, gun their engine, and indeed, when we were at the vigil for the family who were affected, a driver did precisely that, did he not? Came round the corner, despite the fact there were people either side of the street with candles and flowers and all sorts, straight on his accelerator and up the street at a ridiculous speed. We know there are many streets like this. We've talked with ward councillors about what the work that they're doing on Dunton Park Drive. There are many streets in Ramsgate which are badly affected in this way. If we had a town-wide 20-mile-an-hour limit, it would set the expectation that this is a primarily pedestrian area and we should all drive slowly in the town. We note that Kent County Council has proposed a series of roads, some of them inexplicably.
A bit weird, yeah.
Where you couldn't drive at 2 miles an hour, let alone 20 miles an hour, but be that as it may, it's good to see them proposing something. I think we should be responding to them suggesting that we think this is a great idea, but it should go wider. And the proposal that we have put together obviously formalises what we've discussed previously, but follows the pattern of a motion recently approved in Broadstairs. And the wording is as follows. This council notes that speed limits on Britain's residential roads are 60% higher than those in comparable European nations, but more than half of all road accidents occur on roads with 30-mile-an-hour limits, that reducing speed limits on residential roads has been found to lower the incidence of accidents and the number of fatalities and serious accidents that result from them, that a 20-mile-an-hour limit could make a considerable contribution to improving air quality in Ramsgate, thereby both improving our health and contributing positively on climate change. That new Department of Transport guidelines make it easier for local authorities to adopt a 20-mile-an-hour default speed limit on residential roads. That both members of this council and members of the public have consistently shown strong support for 20-mile-an-hour limits in Ramsgate, and obviously this is following Councillor Green's initiative in Nethercourt. In the light of the tragic accident on Leopold Street on Wednesday the 10th of August, in which 2 people were killed and a child seriously injured, this council now resolves formally to use all appropriate avenues to press the county council to reconsider its existing policies on speed limits and to support a town-wide 20-mile-an-hour speed limit on all residential roads, to continue to press for more pedestrian crossings at key crossing points, and to continue to work with the district and county councils to make Ramsgate a safe and pedestrian-friendly town.
Right, thank you, Councillor. So can I just ask you in relation to the point where it says press the county council to reconsider its existing policies on speed limits and support a town-wide 20-mile-an-hour speed limit. Now, what do you mean by town-wide?
The
whole of Ramsgate?
No, the group which met and had a look at this on behalf of the neighbourhood plan group and the planning committee looked with Peterborough at everywhere below the railway line.
I think we need to be, the only reason I'm asking is that we need to be specific. We can't just give a phraseology like that. I think we have to be specific in dealing with Kent County Council, as our county councillors will know. If I can just go to the town clerk first.
I think actually I might be jumping in for Councillor Makinson that we do already have a resolution that was passed at the Planning and Infrastructure Committee meeting to explore with Kent County Council making all roads on the seaside from the railway line down 20 mile per hour.
Okay.
You already have that.
We have it as a resolution from the committee. We haven't adopted the motion.
Right. Sorry, Councillor Makinson.
The reason, well, one of the reasons for that is the expense of these zones are in the signage. So if we take the railway line, there are less what he called gateways, aren't there? So we would need less signage. You only need signage when you actually change from 30 to 20 or 20 to 30. So that was what we talked about before. And I think we should go for that. I think having, I mean, people do put their foot down on the pedestrian area of the high street. And I don't think that will stop. And I would like to get number plate recognition CCTV, which apparently pays for itself, but that might be a step.
A later step.
Okay,
Yeah, so that's why within the railway line.
okay, thank you.
I'd like to bring up the fact that London Road, people go up to 60. It's a 40.
And it's a 40 limit, wow.
When you've had somebody come up behind you and they overtake the bollard because they can't get past you, it's not good.
I think it, sorry,
Councillor
I
Makinson?
think it does extend up London Road. I can't remember exactly where we up the roundabout, which roundabout?
Yes.
It is at that roundabout.
At that roundabout.
Yeah.
Another
Yes. Yes.
Never caught
And then
roundabout.
the call roundabout, couldn't it?
Yeah. Anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Wing?
I'd just like to say we've lost a cyclist in your ward, which was absolutely tragic, and now the loss of two people in Leopold Street sat on a bench after a lovely day on the seaside. We need to do something. The speeds that some people travel at are simply ridiculous. You take, even as an able-bodied person who can suddenly run across the road like I did tonight with the dog, dragging the dog, you're taking your life in your own hands on crossing some of our roads, or even cycling down some of our roads. So we need to do something.
Okay, there is a... Councillor Ara, did you want to speak?
I was just going to ask Tricia, were about to add zebra crossing as well?
Yes, zebra crossings are in there. Continue to press for more pedestrian crossings at key crossing points. I have actually taken some advice from a Kent County councillor I know, and I'm sure our Kent County councillors will be able to confirm or deny this, that the cost of a pedestrian crossing, including all the consultation, everything that has to happen, is about £16,000. Does that sound right? So
Probably more now.
yeah, that was. Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Green, Councillor Piper, Councillor Makinson, Councillor Constantine.
I'd just like to report that the Nethercourt 20 mile an hour is due to be implemented next month.
Excellent.
Well done.
Good. Great job.
I would particularly like to hear from our county councillors about the prospects for us achieving a town-wide 20 mile an hour speed limit. When the highways engineer spoke to me about 20 mile an hour, they said they're very reluctant to implement them on a road that is currently used more than 30 mile an hour because they've found they don't work. But in the meantime, this road outside the multi-storey surely wouldn't be too difficult to add it to what County Council have already agreed, that zone, and get it done fairly soon.
Thank you,
I'd like to hear from the county councillors.
Councillor Piper. Councillor Piper.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering, given your comment quite rightly that it's recognised that 20 mile an hour speed limit is going to stop.
Is it going to stop a drunk driver?
Councillor Austin.
It was a terrible tragedy and will remain so, I've no doubt. But this second part of the proposal, I'm just wondering, in the light of the tragic accident on Leopold Street on Wednesday the 10th of August, the council now resolves formally to use all appropriate avenues too, and the first part it seems fine to me, that's for sure. And the second bullet point, press for more pedestrian crossings at key points. I can't help feeling that that's kind of like chucking a whole jigsaw at KCC and then saying put it together and tell us what you got. I wonder if this resolution could be more specific and press this particular proposal to press KCC for a pedestrian crossing outside the exit from the multi-storey car park across the road to the hotel, which is of course people cross the road there to get out of the car park, to get to the hotel, to get down to the seafront. And the presence of a flashing thingy and a road crossing on that road, I think will also help to slow the traffic down. So I'm just thinking about being specific, and then we can press for others a little later. That was all. Thank you.
Good idea.
Might I come back on that, Chair?
No, I've got some more to speak. I'll bring you in at the end. I've got Councillor Makinson again.
The cyclist that was killed was because there were cars parked too near the edge and there was no sight line to see the cyclist coming. So we did have the traffic engineer, Richard Heats, came down and looked at it all with us and drew up a scheme for all the yellow lines where they were going to go. And then I've gone back on it and said they can't do it after all. And Councillor Constantine is taking it up as well. I think we've just got to keep pushing them on that one, because there was a death.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. Councillor Constantine?
Well, just to reiterate what other people have said, I mean, and what you've just said, Councillor Mackinson, if we don't really push, if we don't really push, then we won't get anything, because there's been, I've certainly put in over the years too many to count, on too many occasions, applications for the metrics on road use, traffic accidents, etc. I've been told the thing that you all know that I will be told, which is if there aren't fatalities, and I know that that's being changed. But the point is, Ramsgate really doesn't get a fair share of money from Kent County Council. There are 20-mile-per-hour zones right across Kent in leafier parts, and we should have that here because it will prevent accidents. I live, as you know, on Royal Road, and I see the speed of the traffic going up and down that road, and it is really disgustingly fast. It's really way too fast. No sensible driver should be driving in that way. But I think the one thing we need to press for, I do think we need a couple of crossings in strategic places, certainly one on that road around Churchill, somewhere better brains than mine can figure that out. But I think the other thing we need to do is we need the cameras, because without the cameras will act as an early warning system for those drivers whose driving is deteriorating or who are driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs. They will catch them early in their speeding careers and they will take them to court, and that just happens automatically, presuming the court's still working, because that's
another question.
But I spent 10 years as a magistrate and I saw the churn of the road traffic offenders, the poor driving that come through. It is the only way. I don't know, is it possible that the town council, given that they do pay for themselves, is it something the town council could fund and recoup? Is it worth looking at?
It's something we can consider, I think. Not for this evening, but I think that's something that we...
Not now.
No, I'm not going to consider it now. No, it's something that we can consider. Councillor Austin?
I just wanted to come back on the pedestrian crossings in response to what Councillor Piper said and Councillor Constantine. We have a list of places that we think there should be pedestrian crossings: Leopold Street, St Augustine's, Westcliff Road, across from Jacob's Ladder, Wellington Crescent, Dumpton Park Drive. We know, you know, we all between us know some of those key places where people are in danger. We didn't specify in here, we can specify, but I think actually to say at key crossing points covers everything and allows us to initiate that discussion with KCC and to consider how those costs might be paid for. Because at the moment we are literally waiting for somebody to be killed in order for the expense to be justified, which is disgraceful.
I'm going to bring in Councillor Shonk, because he's not said much at the meeting.
You know, there's a public consultation on everything that we're talking about. So we're really here for all the people that stand up. I walk around Netherpool many a time. I walked around there Sunday on the safari, the boot fair, yard sale, and it was a mixed, I did ask. They're quite happy, 20 is plenty, as long as it's policed. And if things are not policed, you can have 10 more. But people on the whole were quite happy as it is. It polices itself. I walk around there, David, okay, if it brings concerns, it would probably happen with the consultation. But I do walk that area, and every time I walk that area, traffic flows. The only problem is that where the shops are, that's the road that speeds. I do take on all your concerns, I don't just rubbish them. As far as your the zebra crossings, I agree. Before I was, years ago, I was at KCC, I've done quite a few zebra crossings, one outside Wakeford, I believe, one outside Hainfleet, that's a crossing. I did ask, a long time ago, and my concern was pushed away. I wanted, not just for me, from Ramsgate, and I walk the streets, I know what High Street looks like. I wanted a crossing for the school children in bottom of Chatham Street, and that would allow them concerned at speeding cars. That's where it should have gone. Where did they put it? Up near Farley's, and it closed down. How many times did they ask? It's £23,000 every zebra crossing. So KCC not going to put their hand in the pot with that. That was then. But I would quite agree with the zebra crossing in the High Street, which would allay everybody's concerns, and Leopold. I mean, you are Ramsgate Town Council. It's if we got the funding. The worst thing about KCC, and I'll probably get shot down, is there's not enough people dying. And that's a fact. And for as many years I've been at KCC, I need more site visits, which is very hard to get people. The COVID, I'm not blaming anybody, COVID has probably killed a lot. I have walked around there, all the concerns of years ago are still sitting around it. But I do take this quite seriously. I mean, I'm not here for me, I'm here for everybody. So at Leopold Road, Street Ladder, and Chatham Street, that would be a way, that's slow traffic. But when you go out here, the traffic comes down at what was the old NatWest Bank here, the town of Westwood, and they come down to a cul-de-sac. There's nowhere for them to go. On the Sunday, why don't we just put a sign up there? But they're racing up there, they're just posing on their cars and motorbikes. But when they go up past the yacht club, some of them are doing 60 and 80 mile an hour. So, you know, you can have 20 mile an hour, you can have, unless they're police, which are not.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Sean. I just want to make a comment, really, before I go on to... I've got 3 more speakers and then I'm going to call an end to this item. I think it's obviously the wrong way round. Kent County Council shouldn't wait for somebody to be killed. Yes. They should be listening. They should be listening to the residents and to the town council and to the Thanet District Council. We know where the areas are that need protection, and they should be listening to us, not wait until somebody's killed and then do something. It's certainly wrong. Anyway, Councillor Makinson.
The one place that the pressure was put on and was successful was Cliff's End, right? They've got mini roundabouts, they've got speed bumps, they've got chicanes, you name it, they've got everything down there.
Sandwich Road, yeah.
And apparently they've got a very, very strong residents group there that managed to achieve all that. And it shows what you can do if you...
Yeah, that's good. Councillor Moore, thank you.
Thank you. There is already a crossing in Wellington Crescent. It's up by Humfleet House. But I think Trevor Shonnock might remember that he put it in. Yeah.
Did he have his own paintbrush?
He had to start with it.
It's not.
Sorry, please, sorry.
It's just Leopold Street. Could we not lose the possibility of just adding that to what KCC are already doing? Because I think that could easily be done.
That seems to make sense to me, but anyway. Councillor Moore?
I've just done it.
You've just done it, sorry. Councillor Young, sorry, beg your pardon, I hadn't rubbed you out.
On Newington Road, by the fire station, they've got lamps that flash when the children are around.
There's a school there.
We could do with something like that on London Road. There's quite a few children that come from Chiltern and at the other end from Christchurch. And we need desperately to slow that traffic down. If we have these lights, I mean, even if it starts off, at least it's a warning. And the other thing is at St Lawrence, they've got that 30-mile-an-hour sign,
Yes.
which flashes. And I do think that's a bit of a deterrent.
Thank you. Right, I'm going to go to the proposal. However, I think I would certainly press in relation to altering the first part of the recommendation when it goes to, as we've already discussed, town-wide. If we could, if you're acceptable to it, to put in has been discussed from the railway line down to the seafront. Is that what you?
Yes.
Is that what it is?
Yes.
Okay. And
We can attach them out, please.
okay, and if that's okay with you, and secondly, Councillor Green, do you wish to make an amendment to the second part of that?
I would like to propose that the town council writes to KCC's consultation, if it's still going on, to suggest that Leopold Street is added to
In the light of.
their.
So
So it doesn't change this motion, it goes with the consultation.
goes with the consultation. Are you okay with that?
I'm quite happy.
Okay with that, okay. Okay, so we've got a proposal, we've got a seconder, Councillor Ara. You're all aware of what you're voting on, so can I all in favour please show? Thank you, that's carried.
Could I just add a footnote, Chair, to the effect that we spoke to somebody from the Fire and Rescue Service at the picnic that we organised last week with the Ukrainian refugees about the welfare of the little girl who was so badly injured, and apparently she's doing very well.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant.
So I wanted to let councillors know that.
That's fantastic. Okay, thank you. Right, that's the end of item 8. Item 9, Manston Airport Development Consent Order. Now, before we start on this, can I just point out to members that a contentious issue, as it has been from the start, that everybody has a right of an opinion, whether you like it or you don't like it. So please be respectful to anybody who's speaking, even if you do not like things that they're saying in relation to what they believe to be the right thing. So I'm now going to pass over to Councillor Green, as it was his report. Thank you.
Yeah, as we now may be coming to the end of this, seems like forever saga, I thought it worthwhile refreshing our minds about the history in terms of the council's involvement with this issue. I've tried to do it fairly, and I hope I have. It's been a long journey, and it could now be. This phase could be coming to an end. And so I thought it worthwhile from the council point of view, refreshing our memory. It's true to say that some of us are still very unhappy with the Secretary of State's decision, but it is a decision. And as the MP has said, a decision is better than no decision. I disagree with him because I think the Secretary of State's got it wrong. In the light of that, and in the light of what's happened and the history, I think our residents would expect us to make a comment on what's happened. And I have a suggestion as to what that should be. I have some, fortunately my printer failed, so there's not one for everybody, but it should.
Can we jam? You could just take.
It's true to say that
Pass them down.
what sticks in the craw of those of us that are concerned about the decision is two things really. First of all, that the Secretary of State appears to have disregarded not only the planning inspector's decisions, but also the decisions of his expert team that he employed to look at the more up-to-date situation. And not only disregarded, but disregarded by just saying that he disagrees and not arguing the case as to why he disagrees. Anyway, what I'm proposing on behalf of the council that we should agree is it is disappointing that once again the Conservative government have decided it goes better than the independent examiners and their own advisors. Ramsgate Town Council stands with the residents of Ramsgate and elsewhere who fear the consequences for their town and their quality of life. We remain unconvinced that the claimed benefits for local people are real or deliverable. This decision is a slap in the face for all of us who are concerned about the climate emergency and exposes the hypocrisy of the Conservatives on that vital issue. We anticipate that the decision to grant the DCO will be challenged legally, and once the grounds of the challenge are known, the Council will meet to consider its options. Secretary of State, that's the motion. Secretary of State, in his own report, concedes that the decision will be detrimental to Ramsgate, both in terms of the health of the citizens, but also the effect on its visitor economy and on its historic buildings. So I think this is really a holding motion by the council before it makes a final decision, but I think it's what our residents would expect from us.
Okay, anybody want to, any comments? Councillor Piper.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Green, for the update. It is actually very interesting to follow the thing through. Obviously, you know, I fundamentally disagree with the approach the Town Council has taken so far. But with regards to the motion as it sits before us, I really do think it is not on for us to use phrases like, once again, the Conservative government has decided it knows better. The legal advisors and those who were consulted by the government, there is absolutely no evidence that they were all Conservatives. It just so happens that the Secretary of State has made the decision. I don't think it is right or proper for us to use terminology like that. I accept, of course, that the council will have a position on this, and I accept that I am likely to disagree with the position that the council comes to, but that's democracy, that's what it's all about. I don't know that the decision is a slap in the face. That too is inflammatory language, which I don't think as a council is the kind of language we should be using. But it goes on to say, those of us who are concerned about the climate emergency, I am happy to be corrected, but I am reliably informed that within this latest DCO decision, there were no complaints or adverse comments based on climate, or the damage to the climate locally, or the climate emergency. That came up in the previous consultation. Those points were dealt with in the very recent consultations, and there were no objections from the advisors to do with environment. So I think we can, of course, as a council, make a point about how we feel about this, but I really do think we need to be accurate. I'm quite happy to be corrected, but I don't think I'm wrong. There were no challenges with regards to the environment at all from either side of those that were meeting to discuss it. Of course, I think it's the 6th of September, the decision becomes irreversible in the sense that it stands as a decision. The cost of having such a thing overturned will be astronomical. And I think, I confidently expect that certain groups who may be against it may wish to get a legal opinion from somewhere, but that legal opinion, in my view, is likely to say there is no legitimate challenge. And I think if any attempt is made to use town council money, the people of Ramsgate's money, we would need to be sure that that legal opinion is worth paying for if it's only going to come up with the same conclusion. Thank you for allowing me to go on in that way. We are where we are. The Secretary of State has placed considerable weight to his argument about the potential economic future and growth of this area and the wider area. And for me personally, that's always been a positive. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Piper. I think I'd just like to come back on some of the things that you've said. Certainly in relation to the politics of this, it's clear that the evidence that was put to the government, to the Secretary of State, was clear that there's no validation for it to be used as a cargo hub, and that's what we're talking about. So, for me, that's just my opinion. For me, this is a political decision to suit our two MPs and to suit the Conservative government for whatever reason that may be. Now, it's without doubt that the use of any aeroplanes anywhere affects the climate, and it affects that. And if we have a large amount of cargo planes coming in, no matter how well or how good they are or whatever, it will cause an issue. It will cause an issue, and it will cause an issue with our atmosphere and what people are breathing in, and it will affect it. Certainly at the moment, Councillor Piper noted money's, for want of a better phrase, money's not on the table, and it's certainly not for discussion this evening. This is purely to note the report of where we are now, and should people come up with a judicial review and want the council to put towards that, then I think that's a discussion that we need to have, and we need to have as a whole, because certainly for me there are other issues that we as a council have to consider how we spend our money on, especially with the food bank issues and the state of our residents, the housing, etc., and I think we need to look at how we spend our money wisely. But on saying that, this is a full council, and it's not for me to decide how that happens. But thank you for your comments. Anybody else have a comment? Oh, blimey, hang on. I think you were up first, Councillor Zecchi.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just reading through the motion, this is just pointing that once again the Conservative government has decided knows better than the independent examiners. Well, they obviously had their own examiners look at this, and they were far more experienced than any of the examiners that we had looking at it, that's for sure. Ramsgate Town Council stands with residents of Ramsgate. Well, actually, it stands with some of the residents of Ramsgate, certainly not the majority, and elsewhere who fear the consequences for their town and their quality of life. That might hurt the Champagne Socialists, but I'm afraid it's a reality that we want the jobs here in Thanet. We need to get jobs, proper jobs, quality jobs for the local people, and bringing the airport back to life will give those jobs. And for every job on the airport, it's worth 9 jobs locally. For every 100 jobs, that's 1,000 jobs locally. For every 1,000 jobs, it's 9,000 jobs locally. We as a council should not be disregarding that We have got to take that on board and look at what these jobs mean to the people of Ramsgate and Thanet. But Ramsgate is what we concentrate on here. Says that we're unconvinced the claims the benefits for local people are real or deliverable. Well, they are, and I can assure you of that, Chair. This decision is a slap in the face for all of us, not all of us, I can assure you of that also. The climate emergency, well, as I've stated before about flights, flying in and out of Manston saves an hour's flying time to and from Heathrow and Gatwick, so actually it reduces the amount of carbon that's emitted into our atmosphere by opening Manston. It is a vital issue for the Conservatives. It's an issue that we've stood on. It's an issue that we have supported, and we are welcoming the granting of the DCO here at Manston Airport. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I've got a few more speakers. Sorry, I was looking.
You haven't got a second yet, Chair.
No, I'm just aware. I've just done Councillor Rizeki. I've got Councillor Crittenden, Councillor Nixie. Who else have I missed? Councillor Huxley, Councillor Piper. Did you have yours up? Hang on. Let's see.
And Councillor Moore.
Heather I've been here since 1881, come on, get over that.
Right.
Well, I've worn well.
Councillor Crittenden.
Okay, thank you.
No planes in 1881. No, you're all right.
This is
Well,
just.
it was all right then, that's why I'm so healthy.
This is just my perspective. I do in part, I'm actually going to agree with a little bit of what Councillor Rizeki said, although I also completely disagree with him in as much as I think that the airport is a disaster for Ramsgate on the grounds of health and those kind of things. I think I understand where Councillor Green is coming from in this motion, but I'm more inclined to just simply, as a council, acknowledge that the decision has been made and that it is once again a very divisive decision. For myself, I've lost count, I haven't been counting the number of emails I've had about this discussion tonight. I would say at a rough guess, probably 70 to 80% of those are against the decision that's been made, the ones that I've received. And they are saying to me, I hope that Ramsgate Town Council will support fighting against this decision. Now, I suspect that the councillors who actually support this decision have had a reverse number, because the people that they know will be writing to them to say, isn't this fantastic? Whereas the people are writing to me saying, this is terrible. And so I think, we are going to have an imbalance between the two sides here, because we do have this whole siloed effect with us. So my inclination is, I understand where Councillor Green's coming from, but to just say we note the decision, we note it's divisive. And to pick up on Councillor Green's last sentence, I would stick with something along that line, is that should the decision be made to challenge the DCO legally, as a council we'll meet again to consider its options. So that's the approach I would take. I'm quite happy for anyone to agree with me, but that's my position.
Thank you.
Who else?
Councillor Nixie.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I'd like to remind the whole group really that I think the chair asked us to be respectful, and I do think the term champagne socialist was completely out of order. I take umbrage to that to anybody in the room or anybody outside of the room. I hear what Councillor Crittenden is saying, but I do feel that we, as a council, have opposed the DCO, and to just acknowledge that it's divisive, I think isn't strong enough. Again, I've had, a lot, Nethercourt really does take a lot of the hit of the proposed cargo hub, and people are very up in arms about it, feeling very strongly, and I would like to represent them by saying that we ought to be making more of a public statement as to, again, we oppose this as we have done before. With other things that have been said this evening, I'm not going to comment on, because what we're looking at is what the council is saying with regards to this. There is nothing else on the table. I'm not going to say the fors or against the cargo hub. It's purely this, and that is important.
Thank you. Councillor Huxley?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I agree with you. It's purely a political decision. It's against our government's own climate change policies. So what's the point in having any policies if you just go against them? So it's sort of just greenwashing, really, isn't it? It's against the 2015 Paris Climate Change Agreement that we, as a nation, signed up to. It's going to be a cargo hub. It's not going to be a passenger airport. That's just fantasy. So you're not going to be saving any carbon. No evidence of more jobs. Where's the evidence? Increased air pollution. What the result is now is in villages like Manston and Moncton, for example, there's lots of new houses being built to meet the local plan targets for house building when they could be built on the airport. So various Tory councillors are up in arms about that. They don't like that, and the villagers who live there don't like it either. So that's a direct consequence of having the airport, or this sort of saga that's been going on. So I agree. I'm happy with this motion that Councillor Green has put forward as a motion, a press release for Ramsgate Town Council to put forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Linda Piper?
Thank you, Chair. I just quote from this statement that Councillor Green has put here. Ramsgate and elsewhere who fear the consequences for their town and their quality of life. You could say that the underlying statement there is that the residents of Luton, Gatwick, Heathrow and Stansted have a very poor quality of life because they live in and around an airport.
Some of them do.
So I do not, in this present form as it is, I do not want to be associated with any of this. And unless it is reworded, I would like it put, if it goes to the newspapers, I would like it put on a statement that I strongly object to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Piper. Councillor Moore?
No.
Oh, sorry, someone.
Anything? No.
Councillor Crichton pointed at you. It's going,
Well, stop it.
no, no. Hey,
And sorry, Chair, just on, and I'm quite adamant that if this isn't reworded to sound better than it does.
More professional.
Yes, more professional, particularly this slap in the face. I really do not want my name to be associated with this. So if it goes to the newspaper, please can it say, Councillor Linda Piper does not agree with this statement, or something along those lines.
if I could, thank you, if I can just intercede here, just to say that while the discussions have been going on, the town clerk and I have been working on the proposal, and we will come to members with an amendment to it. So if Councillor Green is okay with it. Councillor Wing?
I mean, I'm a Green Party member, so I'm totally against the expansion of aviation anywhere to such an extent that I no longer fly. I made that commitment 3 years ago that if I can't stand against Manston while I'm blighting somebody else's life getting on a plane. What really angers me though, because I followed this since 2010, a lot of people further back than me, is that all the evidence points to there being no need and that the airport will fail. What really annoys me is the misinformation that's put out there. So we recently had River Oak Strategic Partners saying they'd been in discussions with both EasyJet and Ryanair, I believe. There were no statements in that newspaper report from Ryanair or EasyJet. And if you look at Southend Airport, EasyJet and Ryanair, I believe, pulled out of that airport, and they're presently running summer passenger airport. There's also been an agreement to limit the night flights after a big campaign from residents in Southend who were really upset by the detrimental effect it was having on their health. Also on Southend's own website, They employ 200 people. So the fantasies around 30,000 jobs is, and I respect, George, that every job has another job. I respect what you say about that. I can't get my head around this 1970s aspirations people seem to have for this town and Thanet as a whole. The plans for the port are ridiculous in my mind after going to that levelling up meeting, and the plans for the airport are ridiculous. I think there's a third way for both of these areas that will pull us all together. Today we've had any combination of wind, wave and solar power. I just wish we could find some big investors to use that whole Manston site and work with the green energy suppliers we already have. And I get it that electric cars also pose another issue, which is why as a nation we always need to move forward in the way we're looking at developing green energies. Every solution creates a problem which then has to be solved. So I don't get this whole I don't buy this whole airport site on Manston. The advice hasn't been followed. The experts agree that it's not viable. So there's nothing I can say, but this is a political decision. And if this was a political decision being made by the Green Party or the Labour Party, I'd still be saying it's a political decision. I get that I don't feel that the term slap in the face is an appropriate term for us to use as a council. But whether we like it or not, this is a political decision because it certainly isn't based in evidence.
Thank you. Okay. I'm looking at Councillor Green.
Well, the motion's not on the table yet because it hasn't been seconded.
Okay. Is there a seconder for the motion? Oh, sorry, Jane. Beg your pardon. You're out of my eyesight. I beg your pardon.
Well, I mean, I just haven't really got much to add to what has already been said. I quite strongly resent the term champagne socialist, if anybody that's opposed. I mean, we are the people that are living under this, not in another part of the planet. With it flying over yes, indeed, I wasn't talking about you.
Doesn't go to Wales.
I was talking about George, actually. A flight every 15 minutes over our heads is hardly going to be conducive to our mental or physical well-being. So I very much agree with everything else that's been said. I think it's very much a political decision, and we can't deny that when we look at this.
Thank you. Yeah, right.
I do want to say as well, I think we could tidy up the language.
Yes. Sorry. Councillor Nixie?
I'll happily second.
Happy to second, okay. As I said, the town clerk and I...
Councillor... Reply then to...
Yes.
On the climate emergency issue, the Secretary of State appears to have just declared that it doesn't apply to this decision. And I think his argument is that this decision won't increase the amount of air traffic. Without any evidence to back that up, he's just declared that it won't, and therefore climate emergency considerations don't apply. My other big concern about this going ahead is we've seen absolutely no business plan from the applicant. We've seen no evidence of their funding, where it's coming from. And there are considerable hurdles still for the applicant to overcome, not least with the MOD and obtaining an airport licence and flight paths. So with the economic changes that have occurred recently with predicted 20% interest rates, borrowing that sort of money is going to place a huge burden on whoever tries to operate that airport compared with other airports. But I take the point about the wording, and I would be receptive to any changes in wording that don't change the sense.
Thank you, Councillor Green. This is what I propose as an amendment So I will read the proposal with the change and I will point out the changes. It is disappointing that once again, I've taken Conservative out and put the government has decided it knows better than the independent examiners and their own advisors.
We have its own advisors, Chair, because it's
Pardon?
its own advisors. We're referring to the government. It's not their own advisors. Sorry.
Okay, no, okay, yeah. I know great language, mate, so don't worry about it. Ramsgate Town Council stands with residents of Ramsgate and elsewhere who fear the consequences for their town and their quality of life. We remain unconvinced that the claimed benefits for local people are real or deliverable. This decision is concerning for us who are worried about the climate emergency and exposes the hypocrisy of the government on that vital issue. We anticipate the decision to grant the DCO will be challenged legally, and once the grounds of the challenge are known, the council will meet to consider its options.
I accept the amendment.
Okay, can I have a seconder for that amendment?
Seconded.
Okay. Okay, that is the proposal of the motion. Can I say all in favour, please? All those against, please? Abstentions? Thank you.
Yeah, can I just say something? That there are supporters and non-supporters in this room, but I am really concerned about the impact of this on our officers, because I understand that officers are also receiving lots of emails from pro-airport and anti-airport, which is having an impact on our officers' ability to deliver their normal day-to-day. Maybe Laura can expand. What I'm going to say is that I'm quite happy to be bombarded with emails, but not our clerk or our officers be bombarded with.
If I can just say that if the town clerk will know if any of our technicians, whatever, get anything like that, it's not for them to respond. They pass it forward and it'll come to me and I will respond. I'm quite happy to actually do that myself. Today, like most of us, I probably had a 60-40 against the airport, but 60 against, but 44. So you know, it's a balance. We're wrong if we do something, and we're wrong if we don't.
100% against. So
yeah, well, but I guess because where you're.
I've had 70-30.
Yeah, well, I'm just telling you.
I'm in the same ward as you.
Yeah, well, there you go. You know, that's it. You know.
About a dozen. So there's about a dozen, but they're all against. None for it.
That's probably our usual places, our website, social media. I'll probably send Isle of Thanet news.
It'll be put out.
Where will it be put?
It'll be on our website. It'll be on our Facebook page, and it will go to the Isle of Thanet news. But please, obviously, you have every right to respond as you wish. That's the thing.
Yeah, just a comment. The normal way, if a councillor doesn't agree with the wording of a motion, is propose an amendment. And see what his feeling is. I just don't understand this.
Right. Sorry, I'm moving on, please. We've dealt with that. Thank you. Dealt with that, I need to move on, sorry. Unless it's a point of order.
Well, I want
I'm not taking it.
why I abstained.
No, you don't need to. Right,
Please limit.
we now need to go on to confidential matters.
That is discriminatory, I'm sorry, Chair. You're not allowing me to do that.
We've finished.
I had my hand up and you ignored me.
I didn't see your hand up.
Well, I can't help it, I was sitting there.
No, I didn't see your hand up. I didn't see your hand up. Sorry.
This is confidential, so I'll get so many emails from other wards
It's being screened, it can't be confidential.
No,
It's something one of your councillors might be able to help out. Westcliff Ward, there's someone who wants to use the slipway, but it's locked. So whoever is the ward councillor, can they look into that?
what, Westgate, you say, Westcliff?
Westcliff, right, yeah.
Well, if you,
So I would like to go through the ward.
if you want to email into the.
That's us, Trevor. It's us, so it's sent to us.
Anyway, thank you.
Right, members, before we go into the closed session, councillor Crittenden wants to make a comment about why she abstained. I don't know why, but.
I simply want to say that the reason I abstained was because whilst I completely do not support the airport, I felt, as I said in what I said earlier in the meeting while you were doing the rewriting of the motion, that I felt that it was more appropriate for Ramsgate Town Council to take a more neutral stance and acknowledge that this is an extremely divisive situation for our town, rather than to fall on one side or the other of the divide.
Just to abstain.
That's fair, that's.
And I just.
Yeah, okay, it matters not, but
It
thank you.
matters to me.
It matters to you, but thank you, yeah, but that's, okay, we need to, go through the exclusion of the public and press. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Austin, seconder, Councillor Hetherington, right. Can we go on?